Harris said he wouldn't care if Hunter Biden. I just don't want to be saying this about a guy without evidence. Author Sam Harris says he wouldn't care if Hunter Biden had corpses of children in his basement because he said what Trump has done is worse and more important than that. There we go.
I
Exonerated.
do remember
So
that. I do remember that. Yeah.
Or RFK, or I mean, you could add Elon to this. I mean, all these people are kind of living out the consequences of their dissatisfaction with the present on the public stage and winning a lot of followers as a result. They just like they like the way these guys are complaining about the obvious excesses of the left for the most part. I have several problems with this. One is that most of these guys, most of the time, some of them all of the time, are ignoring the obvious problems and in many cases quite a bit scarier problems on the right, right? They really care that the government tried to micromanage the messaging about COVID on Twitter, right? That's the biggest story of the decade, right? I've got 100 podcasts in me and 100 newsletters in addition to that on that topic, but they don't really much care about what happened on January 6th, where we had a sitting president who for months had been declining to support a peaceful transfer of power. And for the first time in our history, we did not have a peaceful transfer of power. And we had a sitting president visibly trying to steal an election, all the while claiming an election had been stolen.
So I'll go first. The idea that, January 6th, a riot that turned into a gallivant through the Capitol, resulting in one protester being shot, compared to, well, not a good thing, for the most part, compared to the government colluding with media companies and social media companies to suppress news about a global virus, and Hunter Biden, the new president's son, he's saying that January 6th is worse than that. He's saying that people speaking out about the government forcing you to stay in your homes and, work around ways of forcing you to get vaccinated and all these other things, these rights that were taken away, especially in my country where we don't have a constitution. These rights were taken away from you, and he thinks that it's complaining for this handful of people with a little bit of power, a lot of power in Elon Musk's case and maybe Joe Rogan's case, Russell Brand, the like, people who spoke out against this, against the government, against 99% of what the media says. Somehow speaking out against that is a form of complaining, and because they're getting followers from it, he disagrees with that, and he's saying, why aren't people more concerned about January 6th? A lot of people were concerned about January 6th. ABC, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, every Canadian station. I'm sure every Australian station ran something that was left leaning towards it. Every newspaper, every website, which makes up a vast majority of the mainstream media, these companies were all harping about it and still are, frankly, and hid information that ended up exonerating a guy who calls himself a shaman. Now, if you want to say that that wasn't the more important thing to look into, or it was the most important thing to look into, people did that, and so now you need an absolute monolith of people to agree that that's the biggest thing in the world. And because Elon Musk, who was buying Twitter at the time, by the way, so he cares about what happened, and then the thing that's happening that's taking away all our rights, January 6th didn't really have an effect on the people as opposed in the way that it negatively affected the people. He wants you to think that it's this peaceful transition of power that negatively affected the people. But other than that, it was, a bunch of people going to jail on behalf of the government, solitary confinement and everything. You can talk about individual cases if you want. I'm not getting into that right now. But for him to say that that wasn't focused on enough, I mean, they had the show committee hearings about it, but he needs every single person with power to look at that as opposed to the government taking away your rights. That just baffles me, Eric.
Yeah, well, he's obviously just a stooge. I don't even know. Again, no shade. I don't have a. Not trying to talk down or bash anybody, but I don't understand why this guy is even famous. It doesn't make any sense. Seems like a complete shield. And all that you said, all that aside, this guy. Okay, my main thing with that little speech or whatever he's doing. How can you even think about talking about a peaceful transition of power when we live through a bare minimum of a full year of complete destruction, riots, and chaos? And while we were also being told that you shouldn't even leave the house because of this deadly virus. So you want to tell me that there was no peaceful transfer of power while cities across the country were being burned down for alleged, for a presumably completely different reason, right? Like, so what? How is it not a peaceful transfer of power? Did they drag Donald Trump out of the White House by his ears? Like, what are you even talking about, bro? It's all completely backwards. This guy claims to be an intellectual, but he's obviously just a stooge, a shill, whatever. And I think we should play the other clip that's even more outrageous.
All right, let's get to that. I'm not
Yeah.
sure whose show this is.
This
Impact
is
something.
this is
I
through the roof.
I apologize to this person's podcast for not knowing who it is.
But dial up the deadliness of the pathogen. Give us something like, airborne Ebola that incubates for a month. You don't know you have it, and you walk around spreading it, and it's got, a 75% fatality rate, and it's mostly killing kids. No one gets to make that choice anymore. I mean, then literally the cops come in and vaccinate you, and I would say that all of us would agree to that. The moment, again, that you turn up the lethality on the pathogen, you turn up the effectiveness of the vaccine, you turn down the risk of the vaccine. Give me a truly safe vaccine where there's not even one documented case of vaccine injury, right? So that then you just have to be completely crazy to be worried about being vaccinated in that kind of environment. Then it's just a no-brainer. Then we just don't tolerate a diversity of opinion because the stakes are too high. It's a full-on emergency. Bodies of kids are being stacked up in parks, right? We there's so many of them we don't know what to do with them. We've got these mobile morgues, and we have a vaccine that actually works. And then we've got RFK Jr. saying, maybe you don't want maybe you don't want to get the jab on Rogan's podcast, right? That's the world I've been worried about ever since COVID.
So he's. Do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, this is absolutely mind-boggling. First of all, is this what really passes for intellectual in 2023? Oh, just imagine if every single thing was different. Then you wouldn't have a choice, and the cops would come in and vaccinate you. So that's, I mean, he's got a fancy chair. He's on a I don't know anything about that podcast, but he's on a show spewing this. It doesn't make any sense, right? And if we were in this, I mean, we're getting close. A bit of credit for this. So we are getting very close to a weird dystopian hellscape. But he's describing a movie. If we were in 28 Days Later, then you wouldn't have a choice. What are you talking about, bro? It doesn't make any sense. And lastly, we know he's a shill because he has gotten the memo that he needs to go after RFK. Right? They're not even really worried about Trump. They're not even really worried about DeSantis too much. Of course, they're going to come out and say he's a racist because that's par for the course. But now they're focused on RFK because RFK, as a buff old man, is making Joe Biden look completely ridiculous, completely inept. He's very obviously an empty suit. And with all that said, I realize that his little condition or whatever is not, I don't want anything to do with this weird shirtless guy who's like talking through the adapter. Like, I don't want anything to do with any of these people. And it's just very sad that that's how low the bar has gotten, is that Sam Harris, who, for whatever reason, is famous and can just say, well, imagine if everything was completely different, then you wouldn't have a choice to get the juice. What are you talking about, bro? It's nonsense.
Well, I'd have to say that I still disagree with him in his scenario, because it is very tough to be consistent on things like freedom and liberty. And even if the government says, hey, this many people are dying, therefore we are going to forcibly come and give it to you. I
Still
mean,
no.
that's a point.
Still
I
no.
agree. That's a point where you might say, I heard people say, and I even jokingly said, I'm not getting unless the government comes to my doorstep and puts a gun to my head, because maybe I value life more than anything else that could happen from that. But still, I would still prefer not to. Thanks. If this is as bad as you say, I could still get my stuff delivered to my house, unless the world's completely destroyed. Why do I need to go outside, and why am I, why am I worried about the government, and why am I worried about all this stuff? This if there's a 75% death rate and people are stacking up. The government comes to your house and they say whatever they want. That's the thing that Sam Harris is acting like. Because the government says all this, they're going to be the ones to take care of you. If something, this is the whole setup. This is the whole point of the conspiracy side and not so conspiracy side of the things we live through, Eric, is because if the government's going to set up a scenario where you're saying, save me, please, daddy government, and please come to my door. The only way to save you from this latest disease is that, Carrot Top comes to your door. He French kisses you, spanks you on the ass, and then you have to give him $20 and everybody's saved. That's what the government wants. Everybody reliant on them. And for Sam Harris to be like, well, 75%, the scientists wouldn't lie. They would give you this vaccine with no side effects, and they'd tell you that the bodies are piling up. I guess you saw them on the news. That's pretty much what they did in China, dude. They locked down entire neighborhoods. They locked down entire cities. They have people dying in the streets. They're throwing them into vans. They're saying the vaccine's completely safe. The mask will completely save you. They said all these things in China, and then when they're a totalitarian government and they say, things are so dangerous, we have to lock you into an apartment. You saw the videos of them welding people in apartments. Was that fake too? I don't know.
Turn it up, Jordan.